What's up, guys? It's your man, Donovan Sharp, and welcome to this edition of Sharp Shorts. Big thanks goes out to Alex P. for submitting this article from the Huffington Post entitled, 7 Women Ages 28 to 65 Get Honest About Being Single. Now, the first thing that jumps out to me is the words women and honest in the same sentence. Women aren't honest about much of anything, least of all their love lives, so the title caught my attention immediately. Anyway, the article interviewed 7 women about being single, and the responses these women gave made me laugh. The article starts, quote, about half of Americans are single, and half of those who end up marrying end up getting divorced. Yet single women nearing age 30 are constantly dodging questions about their mates, or lack thereof, from peers, parents, and the grandmothers whose one goal in life is to see their grandchildren marry off and make babies. So already, they're characterizing having babies as something that's bad, something that does not benefit them. The phrase marry off is made to sound like it's something involuntary and forced, as if to imply that these women are being forced into arranged marriages with slave owners for the sole purpose of just popping out kids like they're a factory. This is what feminism does, guys. It makes women think that marriage and children is a life of involuntary servitude. So when a girl says to her friends, listen, I want to get married young and have a family, her friends are like, what? Why would you do such a thing? Anyway, the article continues. It says, quote, but how do women navigate life's daily and existential challenges without a partner really feel about flying solo? We went right to the source to find out. Hundreds of women from all different parts of the country and all different stages of life responded to a social media call out and shared their feelings about the single life, including frustration, fear, and inspired confidence. Most eye-opening of all, the advice women in their 50s and 60s would give to their younger selves. Stop putting so much pressure on yourself and never settle. Duly noted, it says, check out what 7 women had to say below. Ay. So the phrase eye-opening in that last paragraph tells you in no uncertain terms that women know that sleeping around has negative long-term consequences. Why? Biology, Mother Nature. You see, guys, females inherently know that sharing their bodies with multiple men over an extended period of time is a bad thing. If they really thought they were doing the right thing, the fact that these women in their 50s and 60s are offering up this eye-opening advice wouldn't be eye-opening at all, would it? Regardless of what they say, girls know that hooking up all the time is physically and mentally, it's an unhealthy lifestyle. This is precisely why 1 in 4 is on some sort of antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication. They're depressed because they know they're not worth much in the way of a long-term relationship. They're anxious because the thought of being alone in their 50s and 60s and 70s causes severe anxiety. Then, of course, we come to the feminist anthem, never settle. Translation, have unrealistic standards under the guise of finding Mr. Perfect or Mr. Right, so you can use the fact that no guy will measure up as an excuse to sleep around indefinitely. Gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, never settle means never settle down. I deserve better. Translation, I want a hotter guy. I want a guy who loves me for me. Translation, I want a hot guy who gives me great fun in bed. I want a guy who has a great sense of humor. Translation, I want a hot guy who gives me great fun in bed and makes me laugh afterwards. I'm looking for Mr. Right. Translation, I'm looking for a hot guy who's 6'4", square-jawed, 5 o'clock shadow, washboard abs, makes 6 figures, who is faithful. Translation, I'm looking for a guy who doesn't exist as an excuse to disqualify all men so I can continue sleeping around. At some point, these women will have to settle if they don't want to be lonely. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to our first woman here, and that is Diana in San Diego. The first question they ask her is, why are you single? Diana answers, I am currently single by choice. I broke up with my long-term boyfriend about 6 years ago after my father passed away. Let me stop right there. What does that have to do with breaking up? This whole father passed away, this is a smokescreen that she'll use to get sympathy so that people can give her permission to make bad decisions. Guys, girls do this all the time. My dog died, so I broke up with my boyfriend. I found out my mother had cancer, so I divorced my husband. Anyway, she continues, we had a decent relationship and he was really a nice guy, but I wasn't in love. Let me stop right there. Decent relationship, gentlemen, means a relationship without drama and the emotional roller coasters these women are used to. He was nice, but he was boring. That's why she wasn't in love. I didn't want to settle, she continues, and I felt selfish for keeping him when I didn't have those feelings for him. I knew he would make a great boyfriend for someone, just not me. 6 years later, I feel like an entirely different person. Self-deprecation, what she's doing is she's using self-deprecation to make us think that she's holding herself accountable for doing something selfish. No, she held on to him because she knew he wasn't going anywhere. She only broke up with him when she had someone else firmly in her grip. This is what we call monkey branching or branch swinging. Gentlemen, girls never break up with guys unless there is another guy. They want to be free, but they don't want to be alone. I knew he'd make a great boyfriend for someone else. That's BS. If he were such a great guy, if he would make such a great boyfriend, then why didn't you keep him around? This is BS, guys. Girls like to talk like this to make themselves feel better about dumping a guy. The article continues. It asks Diana, how do you feel about being single? She says, quote, I do love it. To that, I say, yeah, for now. Now, again, admittedly, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. The single life is more fun for girls. It's a lot more fun and it's a lot more exciting than being a housewife, but it is not nearly as fulfilling as being a housewife. The single life is great fun for girls, but it absolutely does have long-term side effects, and a lot of women are learning this hard lesson now, and Diana will soon be one of those women. She continues, I have learned to ignore the, quote, single shamers and have embraced my independence. I learned how strong I could be when I moved across the country with my dog for a new job and had to rely solely on myself. Being single, she says, has taught me to love my quirks because my quirks are my strengths. I'm single and I'm happier than I've ever been. Of course she's happy. She's single, right? Listen, she's single. She lives in one of the best cities in the world where the weather is always nice. Ask her again in 5 years when she's like 38, 39 years old. I can assure you that if she's being honest, her answer will be very different. The article goes on to ask Diana, have you always felt this way? She answers, quote, I did. I was just afraid to admit it. It has never been socially acceptable to be a single woman in your 30s. That's why I love this time for women, she says. I love that we're embracing our careers and waiting longer to get married and have children. I love that we're really fighting the stigma that has surrounded single women for so long. This is the problem, guys. This is the problem. These women are being sold a bad bill of goods. There's a reason being single in your 30s is a mark against you as a woman, along with infidelity and hooking up with a lot of men. The older you get, the less selective you get to be, which means the guy you end up with is not going to be the guy you're really going to love. This is why women who have children in their mid to late 30s have a bunch of kids with a bunch of health problems. It asks her finally, what would you tell your younger self? Diana answers, quote, you are strong and you are enough. You don't need to be thinner, prettier, or more successful to be worthy of someone else's love. Let me stop right there. But what Diana is not telling you is that those someone else's are low quality. You see, ladies, you do have to be thinner and more attractive to be worthy of love from a man of value. And oh, by the way, being successful has nothing to do with your value. Men of value don't care how successful you are. Women are using this as an excuse to keep sleeping around. Well, I'm not far enough in my career to attract a high-value guy, so I'm not going to get serious with anybody just yet. Well, by the time you're successful, you're 38, and no man of value is going to marry a woman in her late 30s who's had the femininity stripped out of her as a result of climbing the corporate ladder. Diana continues, you have to embrace what you really want in life and learn to love yourself first. You have what it takes to make it on your own. Yeah, you do have what it takes to make it on your own. Everybody does. But guess what, Diana? It's a lonely existence. It's always nice to have someone to share your life with. She continues, be honest with yourself and don't settle for mediocrity because life is just too short. You deserve happiness. Did a 33-year-old just say YOLO? Guys, this is where we are with women. And by the way, nobody deserves anything in life. You have to be worthy of it, which means you have to work for it. That's another problem with women these days. They think they deserve happiness just because they're women and they say that they deserve it. Diana's a few short years away from learning this lesson the hard way. Let's move on to Lori, who is 45 years old from Wichita, Kansas. They asked her the same thing. How do you feel, Lori, about being single? I get lonely sometimes, she says, and occasionally miss having someone in my life. Boom, there's the honesty, guys. She's 45 and alone. She's lying about occasionally missing having someone in her life. She misses it every day. She's lonely all the time, so don't get it twisted. She continues, but overall, I enjoy doing my own thing, sleeping alone and being by myself. No, you don't. Are you serious with this? Like, who is she trying to fool here? She wants to believe that she's actually happy sleeping by herself every night as a woman without a man. Yeah, try again. She continues, I've been single more than I've been coupled up. Wow, I've not dated extensively for about 5 years. Gentlemen, she just told us that she hooks up with random dudes as a matter of habit. Not having dated extensively for 5 years means she was hooking up with dude after dude for 5 years. She's trying to make us think that she's been sitting at home waiting for Mr. Right, but clearly she has not been. Being single more than being coupled up, if a woman actually says that, that is a telltale sign of a banana gobbler extraordinaire. Since 40, she continues, and having a couple of bad experiences with online dating. Let me stop right there. Bad experiences. Translation, they used you for bedroom fun and didn't call you back. This is what happens to you women in your 40s. You guys are thought of as nothing more than a distraction to pass the time, while men of value look for younger, tighter versions of you. She continues, I've come to accept that I may never get married, and I'm okay with that. No, sweetie, you will never get married. Dudes who are worth anything ain't marrying a 45-year-old who's been passed around on Tinder for the last half decade. And no, you're not okay with that. You have to tell yourself you're okay with that to sleep at night. But you're not okay with that. That's why you take Ambien and a handful of benzos to knock yourself out before you cry yourself to sleep. I'm willing to let it happen organically if it does, she said. Lori, sweetie, you got no choice. And spoiler alert, it's not going to happen, organically or otherwise. Until then, she continues, I'm dating myself. I think it bothers others that I'm single more than it bothers me. Who in the world is she trying to convince here? Of course it bothers her that she's single. And oh, by the way, Lori, people don't care about your love life. Not even your best friends. They're too busy living their own lives. People are inherently selfish, especially women. Then they ask her, how have your viewpoints changed over the years? She says, I've gotten more comfortable with myself and less concerned with what others think. Comfortable? Yes, that's a necessity. You are who you are, and you have to be comfortable with it. It's like when you're in jail. It sucks at first, but you have to get comfortable. I may or may not have experience with that. A lot of people are miserable in their marriages, she continues, but too comfortable to make a change or are too scared to be alone. I'm much less hung up on the idea that Prince Charming is just going to show up, but I do hope there is someone out there for me. Because you know Prince Charming is never going to show up, Lori. You see, you had your pick of dozens of Prince Charmings, but because you were young and dumb, you passed them up thinking that they'd still be there when you were 45 years old and decided to stop getting passed around on Tinder. And now that they're not, you're less hung up on the idea that he'll find you. She continues, I stayed in an abusive relationship for 5 years in my 20s, so I know about being comfortable but miserable and scared to be alone. Oh, for crying out loud. Every woman's been in an abusive relationship. Lisa Faye, who called my show, I was in an abusive relationship. Every woman says she's no. They want us to think that it was physically abusive, as in he put hands on her. But like certain things that men falsely get accused of all the time, and you guys can do the math on that, on what I'm talking about. I'm trying to keep this YouTube friendly. The definition has been expanded so much that it's nebulous and can mean anything they want it to mean at any given time. Abusive relationship could mean that he was verbally abusive, which in womanese means he didn't worship the ground you walked on, called you out on your BS, held you accountable for your actions, and didn't tolerate your shenanigans. Get out of here with that. Now, she's also using this abusive relationship as an excuse not to be married in her 20s. I mean, I would have gotten married in my 20s, but the guy I thought was Mr. Right turned out to be abusive, so I said, why bother? I'll just be single to protect my heart. All of that is BS. I don't believe for 1 second that this chick was ever in an abusive relationship. Give me a break with that. What would you tell your younger self? They ask Lori. I would tell my younger self that the opinions of others are not important. The most important relationship in life is with myself. Finally, I'd remind myself to trust my gut feeling. The most important relationship is yourself now that you're 45. And oh, by the way, trust my gut feeling means sleep with the hottest guy. Follow your heart, translation, get with the hottest guy. Trust your instincts, translation, get with the hottest guy.